Central Bank of Nigeria. Evidence suggests now that the balance of payment statistics that captured FDI represent just 35%. The other 65% is what TISMOS discovered, that they come from foreign affiliate trading services activity. And in the past, in Central Bank here, we conduct enterprise survey to be able to make sure we captured all. The National Bureau of Statistics, when that act was set up, I think Central Bank transferred that power to NBS. I think right now, because of what TISMOS is saying, what WTO is saying with respect to capturing of foreign investment statistics, particularly direct investment, there is need for Central Bank to be able to go back, to be able to make sure the enterprise survey methodology that captured the 5 components. And what are these? All remittance profit, change in foreign share capital, trade and suppliers credit, other foreign liabilities and liabilities to head office. That those components will be captured properly, and then we shall be able to actually make sure that that statistic from enterprise survey with that of BOP, we make us to actually move in the correct direction of getting accurate statistics.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that was more of a comment than a question. Let's keep our question brief and straight. Gentleman over there. Please don't give comments, just ask a question.
Good afternoon. The Deputy Governor, Lamido Yuguda, said macroeconomic policy, does macroeconomic stability influence the foreign direct investments in the country? How can inclusive growth take account of regions that are not benefiting from the investment or technology transfer? Not necessarily the whole country, but there are some regions that are lacking investment and transfer. Thank you.
Thank you. This side here. Anybody from this side? I will skip you. Just.
Okay.
If we keep it brief, then I'll come back to you.
Yes, thank you. Ifediora Amobi, E-Concepts Nigeria. The question actually is for the presenter, Menakin Katz. Many countries attract FDI, but relatively few of them are able to transform that into technology transfer or inclusive growth. Unless I missed something during the presentation, were there specific or are there specific policies that can link all of this together? I didn't really get that. Instead of just attracting FDI as an independent source of capital for a country.
Keep it brief, please. Okay, final one. Very brief, please.
Thank you very much. Chukwu Nosei KCOB, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University. A straight one. You know, when we discuss foreign direct investment, we always assume we have the market size, over 200 million. But realistically, when you listen to all the presentations that have been made about poverty, multidimensional poverty, are we really overestimating our capacity and how much foreign direct investment can we actually absorb to translate into inclusive growth that will benefit Nigerians and improve our quality of life? So what are we really doing, or what should we do so we don't take the capacity of the country out of context? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think for the presenter.
To the panel now, I think while we are answering the questions, 1 minute each, we'll be also trying to wind up with our personal perspectives. Please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think there was a question directly to me, and that is about, how to ensure inclusive, growth, and also that other regions that, are currently excluded, say in Nigeria, because I think that's the context, included. I think the answer to this is really simply, logistics, and transport, infrastructure. Because if you look at, this country, a few years ago, the concentration of investment in, say, the coastal areas was actually not always the fact of life. If you look at the history, there was a time when most of the cars that we were purchasing for government and government agencies and people was actually the Peugeot car. It was produced in Kaduna. Okay, Fiat was, producing in Kano, and Shtia was producing in Bauchi. So basically what you see is that the rail network enabled a kind of fairer distribution of investment opportunities because cost of transport was actually taken away substantially from the cost of production because the railway was able to carry so much and at so little cost. So I think that is what we have to go back to if we are to get inclusive investment in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. Please, next one.
Yes, thank you, Moderator. The first point I would make is a point that was made yesterday in the fireside chat between the Director General and your central bank governor, which is expanding the size of the market, if the infrastructure is in place, is what free trade area and bilaterals, but also multilateral within sub-Saharan Africa is all about. So the size of the domestic market and the temptation for protection should be resisted. So that would be my response to one comment. The second point, though, I would make, and India is multiple the size of Nigeria, but we have many of the same problems, is that the institution I was privileged to head, Niti Aayog, actually was commissioned by the Prime Minister to do an investment friendliness index at the level of individual states. Now, the estimated population of Nigeria is about the same as the estimated population of our largest state, the UP. And so, as it were, investment friendliness and the methodology is there. We took a lot of time on the methodology. The investment friendliness is not only at the national level, it is also at the regional level. And in a sense, Indermeet Gill is back in the room, and he did a very skeptical report for the World Development Road, for the World Bank on space-based policies. They can be, as it were, very wasteful, but they do also have that role. And so, in a large, diverse federation like Nigeria, thinking of space-based policies and encouraging individual states is another way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next taker.
Okay, just to add to what has been said, and I think is in direct response to the question asked over there. Is it everyone that receives FDI that gets the same outcome? The answer is no. So the extent to which you are prepared for it, the extent to which you have put the enabling infrastructure in ground, and the extent to which you are prepared for the available resources, companies, organizations, individuals that are ready to take those things and translate it to the outcome that is deserved. It is to that extent that you get the results that you want. So the people that we've seen it, that have been able to get that outcome, there's something that was written in his paper that he called the spillage effect, all right? Meaning spillover, sorry, spillover effect. Pardon me, the spillover effect. So I think that is what needs to be studied for every host country that really wants a real outcome from FDIs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Mr.
Very briefly, I think the three questions are very much related to each other, so I will try to handle them in one go. So I think the quality of FDI matters. So what kind of FDI are we interested in? Are we aligning FDI inflows with our development objectives and priorities? That's number one question for us to ask. By the way, FDI, they are profit seekers, profit maximizers. They may not be concerned about inclusive growth or poverty reduction. It's our policies that make them responsive to our own policies. So the sectors where we target our investment or FDI, both domestic and foreign, matters as well. If FDI is flowing only to extractive sectors, that actually entrenches our vulnerabilities. As we know, extractive sectors, particularly the mining sector, is capital intensive. They are not labor intensive. They are not as labor intensive as manufacturing, for example, or they are not as labor intensive as agriculture sector. So if our objective is to improve the livelihood of the majority of the population, we have to see where is the density of our population exists. Is it in the agriculture or in the services, or is it in the industrial sector? Now, 50% of the labor force in Nigeria is directly or indirectly linked to agriculture. But the FDI that goes to the agriculture sector is minuscule. You can correct me. The large chunk of FDI is going to the service sector, so the banking sector, the financial sector. These are the magnet for FDI in Nigeria, which is much better than the rest of African countries because resources dictate also the FDI flows. But it's our policies that will target them effectively to address some of the key binding constraints that we have and what are our policy objectives. I think these are the way to handle FDI policy nexus. Other than that, it will be difficult for us to break the traps, the various traps that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And okay, Mr. Kaz, please.
There was a question addressed to me on incentives. Well, there's the typical tax incentive to potential FDI enterprise, but then you have to assess the cost and benefit because you lose by way of revenue, but you have to see what it is that you gain. Secondly, if the infrastructure is lacking, you don't have reliable electricity, roads, and so on, you can create an enclave where you ensure that everything is working properly, and then you get things started.
Thank you very much. For the panelists, I think you are also giving your concluding remarks at the same time, isn't it? So there is no closing remarks from you. Maybe you can give the floor to the governor, deputy governor here, and he will be representing all of us. Please, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. No, I think this has really been a very, interesting paper for us. Congratulations to Mr. Menachem Katz. And I'm really happy this is a meeting after almost 2.5 decades. So congratulations, Mr. Katz. And the panel has been also, I think, marvelous. We got experiences from India and also across the globe, and references, for things that we could, look at. Now, I think the key takeaway from this paper and the panel is that investments respond to the policy environment, of the destination country. And another thing is that investments, whether local direct investment or foreign direct investment, they actually respond to the same kinds of incentives. If you have a good policy environment, you have institutional credibility, you have good transportation infrastructure, you have a good skilled labor force that is also relatively cheap, investments will actually flourish. And what we have seen is that if local investments are actually thriving because they are responding to an improved policy environment, it is just a matter of time before foreign investors also notice that and then flow into the country. But if your own local investors are not investing because the policy environment is not conducive, do not expect foreign investors, to come in. And I think that is really, for me, the key, takeaway. So African countries must really be very intentional about attracting foreign investment. First of all, they have to look at their own local investors and ask them, what is it that you want us to do? If they answer those demands adequately, then foreign investors, will also come in. So I think that's the key, message from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Governor. And just to conclude, I'll just highlight a few things. Our discussion has reinforced that the developmental impact of FDIs depends on more than capital inflows. It requires sound microeconomic policies, strong institutions, skilled human capital, quality infrastructure, and deliberate policies that foster technology diffusion and meaningful linkage between multinational enterprises and the domestic firms. And this highlights what the Deputy Governor just said. If you have good policies and good business environment within the country, it will nurture the domestic investment, but also it will be able to attract foreign investment, which will have spillover effect in terms of technology, growth and development. With that, I would like to thank you all, the panel and the audience, for your patience. And I think we haven't eaten too much of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Please put your hands together for Mr. Aziz Mlima, the Chairman of the Board, Tanzania Investment and Special Economic Zones Authority in Tanzania, for leading this. Very important. Thank you so much, other panelists. Please put another round of applause for them. Thank you very much. You did a great job. This is a very heavy meal that you've just served. That's what the FDI is all about. All right, let the panelists quickly take their group photograph on the podium while we make a little adjustment for the closing session, and that is bringing it all together, encapsulating the past 2 days of the 7th edition of the Africa Emerging Markets Forum. Please, Mr. Colley, would you kindly stretch the legs a little bit and join them on the podium for this group photograph. And after that, my technical team will do some very brief adjustments of the podium, and then we will go to the closing session. The closing session will have 5 distinguished individuals. We've all been distinguished, haven't we, since we started? And then we will have these 2 moderators and then 3 panelists to bring this event to a formal close in terms of what we have learned for 2 days. Thank you very much. Please give them a resounding applause as they step off the podium, making way for the closing session. Now, the closing session will highlight some of the biggest conversations we've had over the last 2 days. This plenary is the high-level end of the 2-day event. As we quickly make over the podium so that I can invite the panelists and the 2 moderators. And we want to say a very big thank you to all of you for your patience and for sharing in this very important event. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Governor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My makeover team, can we make that very quick for the closing session? Thank you very much for the good job you've done so far. So as we put that together nicely, we will be looking at very, very engaging closing session. Of course, the panelists and the moderators will help us to bring together all the discussions since we had the opening presentations on Wednesday, all the sessions that we had together on Wednesday, as well as 3 sessions, panel sessions so far today, and other presentations as well. Thank you very much. Let's just give my production team a few seconds more to prepare the final stage management for my panel and the moderators coming up to wrap up this high-profile international event.
Purchase your track today.
Okay, I think we're getting set. Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Now I have the singular pleasure to invite the final set of panelists of the 7th edition of the Africa Emerging Markets Forum, taking place here in Nigeria and, of course, at the auditorium of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Please put your hands together for Mr. Harinder Kohli. Please let him come up stage. Please take the immediate chair over there, the founding director and chief executive of the Emerging Markets Forum, as well as the president and CEO of Centennial Group International. Please take a seat. Give a round of applause for him. Such an energy over the last 2 days here. Thank you very much as one of the organizers of this event. Let me also bring my second co-moderator, Dr. Chukwuka Onyekwena, the executive director of CC, simply called CC. Put your hands together for him, please. Yes, both of them will be sitting at the opposite ends of the panel. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for putting this together in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, my panelists for this are 3 individuals. Please put your hands together for Indemit Gill, the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President for Development Economics at the World Bank Group, bringing his global policy leadership on sustaining growth through macro uncertainty. He will bring in that in. Please, let's also put our hands together for Suman Berry, former Vice Chairman of Aniti Ion, a non-resident fellow at Bujel. Please, a think tank body, let's put our hands together for him. Let's do that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep it up as we go towards the end of this 2-day event. He will be synthesizing key macroeconomic lessons on structural reform and emerging market competitiveness. And the last but not the least, Mr. Aderi Olashonekam, the Director of Trade and Exchange Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria here. She's bringing a very big, deep background into the... Madam, where are you? Oh, I wanted to do an exchange. Then I found out that my Director of Trade and Exchange is already seated. Please give her a round of applause. More than 30 years of experience in this. Now, let me allow my two moderators to fire on this closing panel, and I would please ask AI who should start.
Thank you, and good evening. So it's with some sadness that Chuka and I are going to start this concluding session, but I have 3 pieces of good news to conclude this very exciting forum over the last 2 days. And here are the 3 good pieces of news. One, that this is the final session. I'm sure you're tired and you want to get out of this room. 2, that this will be a short session and we'll conclude before the announced time of this forum. Right? And 3rd, very important, that Chuka and I had the privilege of having a really outstanding panel of 3 members who are perfect to give you the final takeaways from 2 days of very, very rich, stimulating discussions that we've had to tell you what, in their opinion, are the main takeaways from our 6 sessions plus 5 keynote speeches. So Chuka, up to you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be at the concluding session of this great event that has yielded a lot of insights and rich discussions. Now we're at the very concluding session. But I would like to reflect on, the issues that were discussed in this session. In these 2 days, there was monetary policy transmission issues, deepening regional integration, how to use artificial intelligence to boost productivity, how to enhance food security, and then how to attract FDI into the continent. These issues are quite familiar issues that have persisted in Africa. If you attend such events, you would have been tired of hearing, discussions of these issues. So my question to the able panelists is that what is the unique key message that will come out of these this conference? What stands out? How do you explain this persistence of these issues that have, lingered for decades? And is there any issue that was touched on within these discussions that has the potential for a transformative outcome? I throw it up to all of you. Starting from Adenirola Shonekan.
Good evening, everyone. And first things first, as our co-partners in this forum, Chuka and the gentleman there, please, it will be interesting to know when we're going to do this again. It's been very enriching and very productive. It would be nice for us to do this soon, to be able to measure how successful we have been in just talking. Let's do the translation from talking to doing. So my key takeaways will come from Madam Okonjo-Iweala, and it would be about the critical success factors. And about 3 or 4. One, the leadership that has to have Commonwealth interest as a priority, right? And she also told us that let the women stand. Maybe it's time for you guys to sit down, every society or every country that finds prosperous women ends up being a prosperous country as well. So we're looking for prosperity across the continent, right? So leadership that, again, spends a lot of little on self-promotion and more on the people would be good. The second thing is about young people. Our young people staying on the continent instead of going to develop other places. We want them to be gainfully employed in agriculture and services. Today we heard that we need on the continent 50 million new jobs every year, right? That's a big number and that needs to be filled. We already know that more productivity means sustainable growth. So it's very important for us to remove impediments to growth. You know, the minister this morning told us that just by making sure that things don't, approvals are given quickly without spending money, that can make sense, right? So that should be replicated across the continent as well. The fourth one is to build resilience to global shocks, right? We should have food security, energy security. We should start investing in AI. AI changes how we produce, how we communicate, how we trade. We should be sufficient in pharmaceuticals, in automobiles, and in digital products. And more importantly, we should reconfigure our supply chains from overdependence to interdependence. So we are opening new corridors across the region and across the continent. Then, one from my governor is how we see credibility as a national asset. Not just a national asset, but a continental one as well. So we speak we walk the talk, right? And then it becomes a normal thing to do. Let me stop there, please.
Somanji.
Let me. So, firstly, I'm honored to be on this closing panel, and I thank the organizers for that privilege. Let me also say that is a priority of the government I was pleased to serve till a couple of months ago to form closer links with Sub-Saharan Africa, or with Africa more broadly, and a gesture that Prime Minister Modi that symbolized his intent was to negotiate the entry of the African Union to the G20 when India was president of the G20 in 2023, when I was in my previous position. And I would just say that even though there may be a certain amount of, if you like, despondency about multilateralism, I'll come to that in a minute, that the fact that the AU is a member of the G20 should not be lost sight of as an instrument for participating in various global dialogues that are taking place on the issues that we've discussed today. And so for me now, out of my official position and not having to get clearances and all of that, to be invited to listen to a conversation, two conversations actually, a conversation of Nigerians amongst themselves, which was thrilling, and a conversation of Africans amongst themselves. This couldn't have been a more productive couple of days. So my thanks to the organizers and particularly the Central Bank for its hospitality and in bringing me here. And let me just say that, I hope India has achieved escape velocity, but many of the problems of Nigeria for sure, and even of other parts of Africa, are problems we are dealing with even now. And so I do think that there's an opportunity for mutual learning and cross communication. And, the fact of the matter is that the population size of India is the population size of Sub-Saharan Africa. we are at a different stage of our demographic transition. And so many of the growing pains, sub-Saharan Africa, we have been through and to some extent transcended. But the big story of the remaining 75 years of the 21st century are going to be the handoff from the Indian labor force to the African labor force. So that is something that the international organizations and these two entities have in common. So unfortunately, it's not giving me a time check, and my moderators are too polite, so I'll have to check myself.
So, Suman, continue. No, don't worry. We
Okay.
have time.
So the first point, reflections. Firstly, on AI, because this has been an important topic in India, and India hosted the first AI Impact Summit. I was privileged in the think tank that I headed a while ago to have had as the chair of the board Nandan Nilekani, who is really in many ways, I think, a deep thinker on technology in emerging markets. And to many of you, I would commend, I think it's still on YouTube, the conversation that he had with Dario Amodei in Delhi in February at the AI Impact Summit about really many of the messages that Indomeet was carrying, but really about what he called diffusion, what Indomeet called adaptation, as being really central to the social contract between the creators of AI and the societies. Yes, there are the buffers that were mentioned both in the presentation here and by Indomeet, but at the end of the day, with countries facing the employment issues, I won't call them demographic issues, of India, the sense that this is a technology which will work for their aspirations is terribly important. And the sense of urgency that Nandan had about the diffusion in various sectors getting traction quickly, I think is something that was reinforced by much. I would say the second takeaway was from the AI discussion, which resonated in India, but given that Nigeria has a successful startup culture, so I think it was Satya Nadella. It was one of the Indian heads of one of the one of the tech companies. I asked him the question. I was allowed to ask him a question that, look, should India opt out of the AI game? Because that was what Sam Altman had said. This is too expensive a business for a country like India in terms of compute, etc. And he said, no, look, this is ultimately still about mathematics, and India has very good mathematicians, and who knows whether the next algorithms would actually come necessarily. So there are moats, there are barriers to entry being created by the big American firms, but ultimately this is also about brain power. So don't give up, is certainly my message to my own country. But I think Indomeet was being a little too, as it were, how should I put it, optimistic when he said, look, interoperability. Because I think what the US, because India is the second biggest market for Anthropic in the world, and when the State Department instructed Anthropic to as it were, activate a kill switch over a weekend, that was a chilling experience. So I think that AI is going to be transformational. I fully accept that its benefits are going to well exceed its costs, managed correctly, but like any medicine, it has to be taken with caution. Just so I don't bore you, 3 other quick points. I think the issue of leadership, the question that always arises, is governance endogenous? And, in a sense, does it, let me link that with another comment which struck me. So I flanked Prime Minister Modi for 4 years, and he believes, as I think the Columbia academic Ned Phelps did, that what we're looking for is mass flourishing. And that really happens in the hearts and minds. And so communicating a vision for the country is very important. And what I saw in this hall with your governor, with Ngozi, with the finance minister, other ministers, I mean, I do think that you have a leadership which is engaged in communicating and reassuring the population of this country. I can't speak for all of Sub-Saharan Africa, but this is to say that the medium is as important, or the message is as important as the action. So this is a little bit contradicting, madam, what you were saying. Okay. And my final point would really be about research and development. There's an interesting book by Bradford DeLong, Slouching Towards Utopia, which mentions the start of, as it were, self-sustaining productivity growth in the 1920s, which really started with the US. One of the critical elements of that was the rise of corporate research labs in the 1920s, Bell Labs and the big pharmaceutical companies. And my point there is India has tried hard, very hard, to develop a domestic government-supported research capacity, but it has not ignited in the private sector. So don't believe that government research by itself is what will make it happen. It has to, the research and development spark has to move to the private sector, to the university sector. Easy to say, almost impossible to do, but since you have a minister for technology and innovation, that would have been my message to him. Adinda, thank you for giving me this amount of space. Back to you.
Suman, thank you very much for your remarks. And on your last point, a footnote before I request Indermeet to give his takeaways. On last point, you know, I spend some time in a year, 4 or 5 months in a year in Switzerland, a country of only 10 million people, whose population is half of New Delhi. I don't know how many people know or not. They have one of the most thriving pharmaceutical industry in the world. The biggest export of Switzerland is not watches or Nestle coffee, but pharmaceuticals. I think 60% of Swiss exports are from pharmaceuticals, and it's private pharmaceutical companies. So you can develop a thriving industry, export industry, even though their wages are amongst the highest in the world, based on very concentrated, careful research and development
in the private sector.
In the private sector. That's the point. Indermeet, you've been named, cited in every single session and by every minister. What are your takeaways?
Okay. No, I was not going to tell you my takeaways as in terms of a summary, but my reactions to some of the presentations.
Please, please, yes.
So the first thing I was struck by, so I'll talk about 4 things, so I try to remember them easily. So the first one is technology, the second one is trade, the third one I would call Trump, okay, because it's 3 T's. And then my 4th one is thank you, okay? So it's my 4 T's.
I was going to thank you, but I will still thank you. Thank you.
Now, on the
Thanks, everybody.
So on the technology part, I think one of the things that it's really nice to come to a place and see that a presentation like the one that I gave was mostly received by nods like this. Because when I gave a similar presentation in Europe, it was mostly like this, you know? So I think it's really good to see this because it's not a threat. It's not a threat for developing countries. It is a huge opportunity. It has risks. Like I said, all good things come with this downside, but those things should be managed. Now, the other thing that struck me is this, and this is something both on the presentation by the World Bank, but also by something that I think Governor Cardoso said when he was talking about his days in Lagos, that look, you have to make sure that cities are well run. That's where the private R&D and so on. These are all things born out of good, thriving cities, And so I think that part, making Lagos the business capital of Nigeria, it already is that, but of Africa, not West Africa, but Africa. This is not something that is out of reach for Nigeria. It's the largest economy. Lagos is a thriving place. Everybody knows about it. So, I mean and super creative, right? So I think just investing in cities of all sizes, whether it's Kano, whether it is Abuja, whether it is Lagos, that's a huge part of the thing. The other thing on trade, and I sense from Ngozi a little bit of a pessimism on trade, even though she said that a lot. I mean, she was optimistic about the WTO and somewhat pessimistic about trade. And I think she was right about that one word that she said, over-dependencies. I think she's spot on. I think that's a very, very good word, that because of the environment that we had, the global economic order and so on, there was a tendency to sort of go for the efficiencies, and the efficiencies essentially meant that there were a few countries that you could depend a lot on, and that's basically what happened. But I think that will have to change. But one has to keep in mind, the part that I did agree with her on, there has not been a collapse in trade. Actually, all that has happened is that trade to world economic output, that ratio, has not been going up over the last 5 years, but it hasn't really gone down either. So this is not something, it should be for an economy like Nigeria, for most developing countries, trade is essentially a big upside. And I was very struck by the fact, for example, that actually the largest trading partner for Nigeria on the export side is now India, and the largest trading partner on the importing side is China, right? But then I was looking more closely at, everybody complains about the trade environment, about high tariffs and this and that. But you actually, when you look at the numbers, you find that middle-income economies, emerging market economies, tariff the heck out of each other, okay? They tariff each other at twice the rate that they get tariffed when they try to export to advanced economies, twice the rate. So before, she said charity begins at home, and she's absolutely right. Before you start to say, these guys are keeping us out of their markets, well, emerging markets are keeping each other out of their own markets. Okay? So that cannot be a good thing, right? And by the way, when you look not just at tariffs, but if you look at non-tariff barriers too, the non-tariff barriers too are the highest in low-income countries, and they're very high also in emerging market economies. So, and by the way, they're much lower in high-income countries. So everybody pays a lot of attention to what's happening in the North Atlantic, but actually a lot of the trade restrictions and so on are not there. They are among Nigeria and India and so on. So that's the other thing. Now, in order to increase trade, in order to increase foreign direct investment, for example, I heard in the last session that, well, what should one do about this? And I think so I always sort of feel like somewhere in those discussions, Harinder, people go from private sector to big business, and they equate the two. And I think if you equate the two, you have the problems that if you will end up having the problems that today's among the three largest economies are facing right now, which is India, Nigeria, and South Africa, which is massive unemployment. Because these large companies, they may add a lot of value, etc. But they don't create most of the employment. The jobs are created in the smaller places. So if you start to equate the private sector with big business, you are walking into a trap. You're definitely walking into a trap. Okay? I don't want to vilify large businesses. We wrote a whole report on this one saying that you actually do need large businesses. And in many cases, large businesses do wonderful things. Like, Suman will tell you, for example, that part of the reason why so many people have access to digital services, to banking, digital banking, and so on, is because of one large enterprises which increased mobile telephony in India massively in a very short period of time. So it's not the case that all large enterprises are bad, but the same large enterprise that does such good things will also then find in its own interest, it'll actually keep competition out. Okay? So that's the second thing. And then, by the way, last month, 2 months ago, we released a report called Industrial Policy for the 21st Century. And I would urge you to actually take a quick look at it, because when, people talk about industrial policy and they say, well, emerging market economies should do industrial policy. They do. Emerging market economies are avid practitioners of industrial policy, much more so than advanced economies, just in spite of all, when you look at the numbers. But industrial policy should not be seen as a big blob. You can break it down. There are at least 3 groups of it. The first one is what we call, sometimes you have missing public inputs. So you can't provide infrastructure everywhere. So you have a special economic zone or an export processing zone. No harm with that. China has more than 2,000 of them. India has more than 500 of them. There's no reason why Nigeria can't have 200 of them.
Korea
right?
started with that.
Yeah, there you go. But then there are some rules for those. For example, you may have a particular set of beneficiaries in mind, but you don't want to exclude others who want to use the same facilities. Those simple kind of rules, we have them in the report. That's the first thing. The second one has to do with market incentives. And now you start to get into dicier territory, because market incentives tend to go to larger firms, tend to go to more connected firms and so on. So you have to be careful. These are things like export subsidies, these are things like import restrictions and so on. And you have to be very careful that you don't end up with that you don't end up by helping your producers and hurting your consumers. And you can easily do that. Okay? And I think that Nigeria should be especially careful for that. So should India, so should South Africa, so should all emerging market economies. Yeah. Now, the third thing, the third part, and this is the part that I think that the central banks and others should pay a lot of attention to, and they do. And this has to do with market interventions. And some of them have to do with these exchange rate distortions and so on. And invariably, you find that this is a very slippery slope. It can lead to a lot of corruption. It can lead to a lot of regression in growth, high inflation, dual exchange rates. The most connected get really good rates. The others don't, and so on. So what we end up saying is, on the missing inputs, fine to do these things, do them well. On the market incentives, be a little bit more careful. Yeah, but when it comes to macroeconomic interventions, don't do them. Okay? And I think the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria has had such a tough time getting rid of those problems, and it's such a big victory for Nigeria, but it should, in some sense, it should not have been necessary in the first place. That's on the industrial policy. Now, the third part I wanted to talk about is the global economic order. And there's a lot of this, saying that, and I think it's associated with President Trump and so on. But it's not. If you look at this issue, you actually find that many of these things were coming down the pike even before, okay? So if you look, for example, over the last 5-10 years, I'm not talking about January 25th, 2025, I'm talking about much before that, okay? If you look at that, you find that the G20, someone's favorite association of nations, the G20 are the biggest practitioners of trade restrictions. The smaller economies know that it is in their benefit to actually have freer trade. Even during this time, you found that the smaller economies actually took up trade measures. Most of them, or they were more trade liberalizing rather than trade restricting. But the big economies, the G20 economies, they're the practitioners of bad trade policy. Okay? So when my boss was going to talk to the G20, and it was the topic was supposed to be, trade and so on. So I told him to tell them that I have looked around for the criminals in the trade crime, and they're all over here in this room, right? He didn't take my advice. That's why he's my boss. Okay, but that's the thing. Now, so I actually found that there was a fraying. Actually, going back to the global financial crisis and the aftermath of that, Europe had started to become more restrictive in terms of trade through many guises, climate, etc., whatever it was. So all of these things were already coming down the pike. They've been coming down the pike since about 2010, 2009, 2010. Okay, so then if you look at that and you say, how did Africa do since 2010? How did Africa do? Okay, so the thing that I did with my colleague Kenan was we looked at per capita income of sub-Saharan African countries, or African countries generally. We separated the big 5 economies from the smaller 43 economies. There is no increase in the per capita income of African economies on average since 2010. Zero. Okay? So you say, all right, so everybody keeps saying, the global economic order, the previous global economic order was so good. Okay? So there are 2 observations I have with that. The first one was until 3 years ago, everybody was cursing the global economic order. Okay? Then Trump came and everybody said, we love that global economic order. Well, get with it. It's one or the other. Okay? I say it is the other. I say good riddance to the old global economic order. The old global economic order was really benefiting Europe very much. But if it was benefiting Africa, then why have African per capita incomes not increased in the last 15 years? Okay? So I would say, come up with a better economic order that next time round, 15 years from now, you see your per capita incomes have quadrupled because they should be doubling every 7 years, or at least every 10 years.
Every 10 years.
Every 10 years, okay? So that's the reason I say is that don't go away with this thing saying, oh, terrible, the global economic order has changed and so on. Create a new one. Now you have more than 50% of world GDP is in emerging markets. It's not in the rich countries, okay? So you now have the chance to do it, but I still sense a lot of passivity, and I think it's because emerging markets have not yet learned to identify the things that they have in common, interests that they have in common, and coalesce around. And I think that I think that forums like this are part of that building, of that ways to understand the issues, ways to identify issues in common around which you can coalesce. So I want to thank all of the organizers of this for doing this. This is my last mission as World Bank Chief Economist. I'm going to retire at the end of next month. Yay. But what I did, Suman was asking me over lunch that what was my main accomplishment in the thing. I don't know yet, but I tell you what I did try to do. I tried to make sure that the interests of emerging markets were front and center in the work that we did in the Development Economics Vice Presidency. So it is fitting that I actually have my last intervention in the Emerging Markets Forum. I've thanked everybody in person, I think, except Sylvie, and I want to thank Sylvie a huge amount for all the things.
Thank you. Indermeet, thank you so very much. I can confirm what you told Suman, that your heart was in emerging markets, and particularly low and middle income countries. And I think what the president of the bank wrote in your retirement note, which focused on this accomplishment, is correct. But what you didn't say, but what I did say in introducing you, I think you restored the quality of the bank's economic work, which is hard, if I may say so. But it needed to be restored, and the bank has again, under your leadership, become the gold standard in that. And I think you should take great pride in that. And, you know, there'll be thanks given after our session formally. But I really want to thank you for coming all the way to attend our forum, and, you know, for bank's chief economist and senior vice president to make this long trip, and especially this being your last mission, is for us a great honor, and I really, really want to thank you for that. We have a few more seconds, and I want to share with you all something which. Thank you. Thank you. If you allow me a few seconds to share with you something, I was talking to the Minister of Science and Technology privately about my thoughts about importance of what we've been discussing about the future of Nigerian economy and its importance to Africa as a whole and the world. Goes back to what we discussed with, and what Ngozi said yesterday a little bit, and the work we did with Kofi Annan, the great legend of Africa. A few years ago, I had the privilege of working with Kofi Annan, and Ngozi was on that group before she took over WTO. And we called at that time that work, or I coined that sentence in our report with Kofi Annan, that Africa was the final frontier of development for the world. And Kofi liked that sentence, and this is how our report started, with that sentence. And Kofi also said, together with President Kohler, who was the co-chair of that group, together with Kofi, that, and Ngozi cited that sentence, that number one challenge for Africa's future is leadership. Because we had written a report which was a lot of economics, you know, policy reform, monetary stability, macro reform, institutions are very important. And Kofi said, no, number one issue is leadership. And that's what Ngozi was quoting yesterday, very correctly. But what I was telling the minister, and this is repeating what we said 6-7 years ago, that Africa's future, 49 countries of Africa, or 54, depends how you count the number of countries, depends on what happens in 3 countries. Just 3 countries: Nigeria, South Africa, and Ethiopia. If these 3 countries do well, and they act as the engines of African continent's economies, all the potential of the continent and billions of people will be well. They will drive the the neighboring countries and the continent as a whole in the right direction. But if these three countries don't do well, not only the people within the countries will not do well, but the continent as a whole cannot do well. And therefore, what happens in Nigeria is critical not only for Nigerian people, but is critical for Africa as a whole. And in my view, and this is what we also said in that Kofi Annan report, the future of world cannot be secure and peaceful unless your continent doesn't do well. And I think this is what is important, what we've been discussing in the last 2 days. Thank you.
And on that note, I would like to thank our panelists for this very engaging session. Thank you.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Please let's give a rousing hands of applause for the closing panel. May I please invite the Deputy Governor in charge of financial system stability, Mr. Lamido Yuguda, to go on stage to join the panelists for this group photograph. And after this first, I'm going to invite two other individuals to join the final group photograph as well. Thank you. Please, may I invite Ms. Sylvie of Emerging Markets Forum to also go on stage. Please give a round of applause, as well as Dr. Nkiru Balonwo, who is an advisor to the Central Bank Governor on strategic communications and engagement at the Central Bank, also to the stage to be part of this final group photograph. Thank you, thank you. All smiles, please, for all is well that ends well. Now, for all of this to end well, I think there are more photographs to be taken. Done? The family photograph. Thank you very much. I love that. A round of applause for them as the panelists and the moderators and the Deputy Governor goes off stage. I'm sure there are a few more. Yeah, a few words of closing remarks and goodbyes a little bit. But it's not yet goodbye, because the man who is wishing of all of us goodbye, we have come to the end of this, is my Deputy Governor in charge of financial system stability. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Lamido Yuguda, speaking on behalf of the Central Bank of Nigeria and the two great institutions that put this together, the Africa Emerging Markets Forum, the 7th edition. Mr. Deputy Governor, you have the floor, please. Thank you.
Team speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it is a singular honor and privilege to deliver this vote of thanks at the close of the 7th Africa Emerging Markets Forum. Over the past 2 days, we have engaged in rich, forward-looking discussions on the imperative of building resilience amid an increasingly complex and uncertain global environment. The quality of the dialogue and the diversity of perspectives shared throughout this forum underscore our collective commitment to shaping a more prosperous and sustainable future for Africa and other emerging economies. In reflecting on our deliberations, I am reminded of the words of renowned leadership scholar John C. Maxwell. Resilience is not about avoiding challenges. It is about facing them, learning from them, and emerging stronger. That observation aptly captures the spirit of this forum. Through candid exchanges and thoughtful engagement, we have explored practical pathways for strengthening economic resilience, deepening regional cooperation, and unlocking the immense potential of our continent in a rapidly revolving global landscape. On behalf of the Central Bank of Nigeria, I wish to express our profound gratitude to the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, for his leadership and unwavering commitment to promoting dialogue, reform, and international cooperation. We are also deeply honored by the participation and valuable insights of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General of the WTO, whose long-standing contributions to economic development and advocacy for Africa's integration into the global economy continue to inspire policymakers across the continent and beyond. We also extend our sincere appreciation to Mr. Harinder Kohli, the Chief Executive of the Emerging Markets Forum, and all partner institutions for their vision and dedication in convening this important gathering. We are deeply grateful to our distinguished keynote speakers, moderators, presenters, and panelists whose expertise and insights enriched our discussions. The conversations on monetary policy, regional integration, urbanization, artificial intelligence, foreign direct investment, technology transfer, and inclusive growth have provided valuable perspectives that will continue to inform policy and practice across our region. I also wish to acknowledge and thank all participants who traveled from across Africa and beyond to be with us here in Abuja. Your active engagement, thoughtful interventions, and commitment to constructive dialogue have been instrumental to the success of this forum. Our appreciation further extends to the Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa, CC, the Emerging Markets Forum Secretariat, and the various departments and staff of the Central Bank of Nigeria, whose professionalism, diligence, and attention to detail ensured the seamless organization of this event. I also wish to thank our two MCs, Boson and our MC from yesterday, for leading the proceedings professionally in a way that we have always come to expect, from you, sir. As we conclude this event, let us carry forward the spirit of partnership, innovation, and resilience that has defined our discussions. May the ideas exchanged, the relationships strengthened, and the commitments renewed here inspire bold actions that advance sustainable development and shared prosperity across our continent. on behalf of the Central Bank of Nigeria, I thank you all for your invaluable contributions and wish you safe journeys to your respective destinations. Thank you, and may God continue to bless Africa and guide our collective efforts towards a more resilient, prosperous, and inclusive continent.
A round of applause, a standing ovation, ladies and gentlemen and delegates, for the Deputy Governor in charge of financial system stability of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep the applause going. Please, let's keep the applause going. Please, let's keep the applause going for the successful conclusion of the 7th edition of the Africa Emerging Markets Forum 2026. And in the words of Mr. Harinder Kohli, this is the largest and the best ever held. Now may we all please stand. On that note, and all existing protocols, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in this auditorium, as well as online, for the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve our sovereign motherland.
Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, our chief host at this event, I have the singular privilege and honor of saying thank you and bon voyage. Safe travels and have a great evening, everyone. Until next time, I am Bosin Omofaye. I'm signing off this event. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your lunch, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You are very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wish you all the best. My governor.